Welcome to the first video for Mako's Diner. Yes, it was named after the voice actor for Iroh. I felt it appropriate. Today I will be going through some basic things you need to do before you cook. These include making sure your knife is sharp and ready, making sure you have everything you need to cook with, and most importantly, making sure that the ingredients you need are set out and at the temperature they need to be. Now, this is called mise en place, French literally for to put in place. Before I started the video, I did my mise en place. At least I hope I did. I pulled out everything I thought I would need for the class, and I have it actually set up right in front of me, including the computer I'm recording on. I do not have music playing in the background, even though usually I would, because it helps me think and concentrate, because I want you to be able to get the full experience out of this. To start with, I'm going to go through all the mise en place you will need, including, if you're working in a professional area, clothes. Typically, I'm forced to wear checked pants, black and white, hides the stains. This jacket is required. This hat is required, and that's why I'm wearing it all. I'm trying to be as professional as I can to get used to it for school. Another pieces of equipment you will be using in kitchens is aprons. Very good for keeping this clean. You will also be using bar rags. This is my personal one. It's important not to keep them on you because it's a health risk violation. And if it gets snagged on something or catches on fire and it's tied to your apron, you're going to burn. You're going to get burned, you're going to burn up, whatever the case may be, you're going to get hurt. So, I'm going to jump right in. First, I'm going to go through what I set up for food. Now, I'm going to cook myself a simple little lunch of just pork cutlets. Start with, I pulled out my garlic. This is elephant garlic. I chose it because it's really nice. One bulb can season an entire meal. And it's also nice and big, so it'll be able to be seen by you guys very easily. Next, shallots. Slightly oniony, but very, very delicious. When I cook it, I put it in the skillet, cook it with the juices from the dish, and then I serve it up with the food, and my fiance just loves it. I do too. It's delicious. Try it. The next thing I have is the pork. It's currently coming up to room temperature, which is important because if you start out cooking with your meat at fridge temp, then it won't cook properly. And if you take it from frozen, throw it in a skillet, it's definitely not going to cook properly. And with pork, you don't want that. Beef, you can get away with it. Pork, you don't want that. It's dangerous. There's many different pathogens, bacterias, little tiny creatures that could be in it that could make you sick or worse, kill you. I'm going to take these off because I'm seeing reflection. I don't need them anyways. Not for this anyway. Next up, and this is in my opinion one of the most important things you could have in a hot kitchen, a bottle of water. When you're thirsty, you'll be glad you put it in your mise en place. Next is sharpening steel. This is only really used at the beginning of the process. Kitchen knife. This one is a chef's knife. I think I got it at 9 inches. Tongs. I've got 2 sets of these in my kitchen, but only need one for to show you. And this is my personal part of mise en place. Sharpening stones. This is a kit I got used. It's real nice in that you put the stones in there and you can sharpen it easily. I was sitting there at one point sharpening my knives for about an hour just to get them nice and sharp and beautiful. Other things you may need are over here off camera: flour, sugar, salt. You're definitely going to need salt. Always consider seasoning it with salt unless you have issues with salt. And most importantly, lubricant. Oil. Use real kitchen oil, people, not the stuff you use in bed. So, I think that's... Oh, no. Other things are like a pot and skillets. I have 3 different sizes. These are Tefal. These are real nice. They start out non-stick, but my fiance has abused hers a little bit. She's used a metal spatula, which is scratched up the bottom. So these are really nice, real good for flipping and whatnot. If you're working with like soups and stews and whatnot, and you have to use a skillet to start with, you want something that has a straight side. I think it's called a sauteur. I think it's called. I'm not entirely sure what the terminology is off the top of my head, but you'll want one that has tall, straight edges. It's actually I got one over here. I wasn't gonna do this, but you want something like this. High, straight edges, good for keeping liquids in while you cook. There are many, many, many other things you could want to, and I'm not going to pull those out for this because they're not really needed, but something you will need is tasting spoons. Important, don't taste with the spoon and then use it again. You are contaminating the food. If you're sick, people get sick. If people get sick, your company gets in trouble, or you get yelled at, or your mom's mad at you. Whatever. Use one spoon, wash it or put it in the sink. Use a different spoon. I don't care if you have to go through 100 spoons to make a meal. I prefer you guys not get yelled at by your moms. Another thing you're going to need is thermometers. I have 2 here. I'm going to use one for raw ingredients, or one for meat and one for veggies, if necessary for veggies. So I have 2. One of them has to go back to my teacher. My class includes pens, pencils, stuff like that on you as well, a Sharpie, but I'm not going to tell you to get all those things. You don't need them for your home kitchen. Now, when you start out, make sure you clean. That should be part of your mise en place. Make sure it's clean. My stove is a little coffee stained because, well, coffee boils over. So that's basically it that I can think of. So today I'm just going to teach you some simple knife skills. I'm going to first tell you, sharpen your blade. This is important. This can take a while, so I'm going to possibly try to edit this if I can find a program on my computer to shorten it up for y'all. Or I can just try to go quick. Alright, as you may have heard, I ran this through 50 times. I often do 100 times or 200 times. It all depends on how sharp you want it to be, when the last time it was that you sharpened it, all that stuff. I did forget to mention that one of the most important things to do in a kitchen is wash your hands. Don't want to get people sick. Now, usually they tell you to use a single-use towel, but I'm working in my own kitchen, so I'm going to forego that this time. However, you do want to wash your hands thoroughly and as far up the arm as you can. You actually carry a lot of bacteria and stuff that you don't even normally think about up your arm. And when you're cooking, that can easily get into food and whatnot, especially if hair falls out or something like that. So wash your hands thoroughly as high up as you can. And go to work. I've sharpened my blades, so I can put this back in my junk / sharpener drawer. Next is the fun part. I'm not entirely sure if I do this at the right angle, but you're supposed to hold it at 45. Start down at the bottom. Keep your hands behind the guard. This one's a little harder to do that with because it has a funky guard, but keep your hands behind the guard. Because if you come in, you don't want to slice into your finger because your hands are way up here. So hand behind the guard, put your blade here, and just run it across. Both sides, same thing. This doesn't exactly sharpen the blade per se, but it does kind of hone it into position and make sure it's straight and clean up the edge. I was trained in machine technology before I went to culinary, and whenever we would work with metal, there would always be a burr along the edge, which is shards of metal that haven't separated from the work, so they stick up. And if you were to run your hand across it, you will slice your hand open. So we would smooth those out with special tools for it. Same thing applies here. If you have a burr on it, which in the case of knives, it's just curling over, it's not going to cut quite right. So the stone, or the steel, straightens out that edge. Put your tongs where you can reach them. I hang them on my oven door. Might as well get my other one out and ready. Separate my skillets. Oh, I also recommend you eat a good breakfast or lunch before you start cooking. If you're cooking in a kitchen, because I've been in the position where I've gotten sick from not eating right for kung fu. And that's not even that hot of work. You're working next to fire. You're not maybe not drinking like you should, which is again why I recommend water. So I recommend you eat something, even if it's just a sandwich. Get something in your stomach so that way when you're starting to overheat, you're replacing what you're sweating out quickly enough. And I don't want to see y'all sick. I don't want to see y'all go and do something and then pass out from not eating because of high heat and whatnot. I want to see my friends still nice, happy, and healthy, and up and around to cook again. Now, I've got this set up. This isn't going to be an actual recipe. I'm just going to show you how to cut the stuff I'm using. And then I'm just going to cook myself up a quick meal to show you some procedure, some way of doing things. I'm going to do some flipping of some stuff. I'm going to check and see if I have mushrooms, actually. Mushrooms are going to go with this. Oh, nope. False alarm, no mushrooms are cut. You know what? I'll cut a couple. They need to get used before they go bad anyways. Portobello's, everybody. I'll have to get my fiance to get me another one of my nose itches. Okay. Alright. First thing to know is don't grab your blade like this. Don't grab it like this. This actually is not that stable. It doesn't give you a good grip. Grab it with your thumb and forefinger just on this side of the hilt. Wrap your fingers around it. And yes, I'm sitting here waving this around like a maniac. That's because I'm comfortable with the blade. I know what I'm doing. I've used this for a while, and yes, I did hit the oven hood, but it's fine. It's fine. Nothing broke. No one got cut. Now, because I'm going to be actually cooking and not just cutting, I'm going to put on my nice, neat Jack Daniel's black apron. Well, that's a little wet. Because I'm fat and I don't want this to go flopping all over the place or untying. And I don't want any hanging edges. That's important. When you work in a kitchen, you don't want anything that's hanging, because if it catches on fire and it's part of like your apron or whatnot, you could get severely hurt by it. So, Jack Daniel's apron to cover my whites. Now, I did tell y'all don't tie this to your apron, but I'm going to break that rule. I'm just going to tuck it up and over. I like having it close by hand at all times. But don't do this in a kitchen. Please don't do this in a kitchen. They will not be happy. So, as you can see, part of my mise en place was setting up a cutting board. I'm going to put my glasses on now so I can see what I'm doing a bit better. Don't mind the dishes, they're freshly done and drying. So this is my cutting board. This is my knife. Underneath it, I have a microfiber cloth. This is to keep my counters a little bit cleaner, and it makes the board more stationary. So first things first, because the pork is still coming to room temp, I'm going to do elephant garlic. Cut it out of its little prison. You can use any kind of garlic you like. I prefer elephant garlic because, like I said, this is one bulb of garlic. I then like to... Gotta do this the hard way, see? Little trick. Put the garlic on the table, doesn't matter the size, and just press. That force, especially on the top, will separate the garlic into its cloves. These are each cloves. And as you can see, they're big. Which again is why I like it. I'm going to go ahead and use this one because it's already cleaned. Mostly. So peel off the rest of that skin and there you go. Elephant garlic with no skin on it. I have a garbage disposal, so I'm just going to throw that in the sink. Pull out my Tupperware, which has some garlic from the last time I cooked. Put my excess garlic in there. You only need one clove for this because, well, one clove can flavor the entire bloody meal. I have a trash can at my feet for things I don't like to put into the garbage disposal. Gets in the way a little bit, but not so much that I have to freak out. And it's great to have it at your feet because you can just kind of push things off. Get that skin off there. Now, garlic is fun. It always is. It tastes great. You've probably if you've seen Crocodile Dundee, the guy says, needs more garlic. Well, that's true. Garlic is antibiotic. It's delicious. I'm going to take a drink now. It's good for you. It tastes good in any dish as long as you cook it right. This is pretty strong stuff. I've made the mistake of putting a whole clove of elephant garlic in something once, and well, that was a mistake. It was too garlicky. But if you're using it in the right dish, it's fine, like garlic butter. I do garlic butter at home, and it is delicious. So first thing you want to do, I'm going to do slices. So I'm going to actually cut this in half so I can do a couple different. So it's cut in half. First things first, I'm going to do slices. So I'm going to use this one. Tip of the blade on the board. This is how I cut. Not every chef does it this way, and this might not necessarily be how the school teaches, but this is how I cut. I take the blade, put the tip on it. This is important. 3-finger rule. The 3-finger rule is something I learned from Chef Gordon Ramsay. You take one finger, middle finger, put it on. 2 fingers behind that, and curl your knuckles inward. The point of that is because, and I think you can see, yes you can, when you're cutting, you use that finger as a guide. As long as that finger is there, you shouldn't be cutting your tips off. Nice and easy, all the way across. And these are actually some of my thinnest slices I've ever done of garlic. So I must be pulling all the stops out. And you guys can't see it, but in the back here, I'm using my thumb to support and push. So I'm actually bringing my fingers together like this, little by little. Little tip I've been finding. So, slice. Now, some of this will probably go in with my mushrooms. Some of it will probably go in with my pork. I'm not sure quite yet. So I'm not going to work on that piece. So there you have little slices of garlic. Delicious stuff. Now, I did not set this part up because I'm an idiot. But something to put it in. A lot of chefs use ramekins. I'm using whatever the hell is in my kitchen. So there's my slices. Lesson 1 complete. How to cut garlic. Next, I'm going to show you how to mince. Take your blade, flat on it, just slam it. It kind of breaks it up on the inside, makes it a little easier to do this with. And then rough cut. I'm removing the stem of it. Don't do that, people. I'm just being, funny. Bring out your salt. Little pro tip. Take a pinch of salt, sprinkle it on top of the garlic. We're doing a nice mince. So, you've got garlic on the board. This kind of makes it easier to cut because it kind of locks it onto the board a bit. And it prevents the juices from just seeping out. Localizes it. Hard to explain this method, but it's basically you're just rocking the blade. Anything more detailed than that, and I'm going to get lost myself on how to explain it. This is something I add to it. Wipe off the blade and kind of rock it from spine to edge. This kind of crushes the garlic further, making it into something of a paste. Every now and then scrape back, because this does like to, go on enthusiastic walks across your cutting board. Oh, look, a vampire just died. Kozai, that was for you. I'm pretty sure you'd appreciate that joke. I'm having a little problem with one section, so I'm going to separate and work. A little chop again. Like I said, this kind of just pastes and minces it at the same time. Now, if you don't want to do this much knife work, you can always get pre-minced garlic. I'll see if I have some right quick. You can get pre-minced garlic. It's not quite fresh, but it's as good as you're going to get without having somebody cut it for you. I like it. It was one of my first minces that I used that weren't my own. So when I'm feeling particularly lazy for a dish, I'll use that stuff. So I'm going to spread it and continue chopping a little bit. Notice how I'm using my hand to stationary the blade. This is so that way when I'm cutting, it doesn't move around more than I want it to, and it gets that nice rocking motion. And there you have mince. Grab another bowl. I'm using an actual ramekin this time. Side of the edge of the blade underneath to pick it up and just scrape it on in there. Now, in kitchens, especially if you are working with people with food allergies, like if they're allergic to garlic, but they're not allergic to shallots, you might have to wipe your board down. But, a little rinse off, since I'm not allergic to shallots or garlic, and my fiance isn't allergic to either, I'm not going to bother. I'll be right back. I need to get something I forgot. This is another piece of mise en place for bakery, actually, but I'm going to use it here. It's a board scraper. I still got stuff on it, so I'm going to try to get it off. I know I sit here and I tell you all to have your mise en place in place, and what do? I don't do it. Now, I'm not too worried about a little bit of sticky stuff. It's just home cooking. But you might have to worry about it elsewhere. Take your board scraper, scrape it across. I'm just going to... Don't do this at home, people. I don't care about my health as much as I care about yours. So, board scraper. Done. I'm going to tuck that underneath my board and pull out the shallots. Let's get a nice one. They're all fairly the same size. Shallots. Now what I do is I get off the loose stuff that's easy to grab. Don't worry, that's not going to be a problem. See? Don't do that in the kitchen, people. They won't be happy. Cut it in half. Open it up. Grab the brown edges at the tip and just peel it down. And what you have left is good, wholesome shallot. Don't cut the ends off yet. Same thing with the other half. Alright, I told you not to cut the ends off yet because it will make cutting it a little bit easier. And if you've ever cut actual onions, you've had that burny eye, I'm crying my eyes out issue. That's because when you cut, there is a chemical that's natural in onions that comes out and mists in the air and gets into your eyes. So we're going to do it a little bit differently. Hold your blade proper. Put the root away from the tip of your blade. And just slice down. When you start reaching the root, rotate it 90 degrees. Continue. Once again, continue. Slice once in the middle or twice depending on the size of your shallot. Cut that root off, get rid of it. Now I'm only doing half of my shallots like that, but now if you can actually see it, you've got some nice sections, half rings, and some points. I'm going to keep my other shallot the way it is. Cut the tip off because I don't like that part. And still keep the root on. This is because when I do it, I will put it face down in the skillet, cook it up with everything else, rolling it around every now and then, and I want that root there to keep all the layers intact. This is a tip from me to you, not necessarily from my instructors. I'm going to put away the rest of my garlic before I continue anything further. Done. Now I need one more bowl. Another little lock top one. Scrape the shallots in. And we are almost to the pork. Board scraper. And the method for mincing shallots will be the same as what I showed you for garlic, so don't worry about that. Next, I'm going to slice up a couple mushrooms. I'm not going to need much, it's just for me. So I'm going to cut up 3. Now these ones are a little bit more difficult because of the stems. I like to cut the stems off nice and even with the caps. Personal preference, you could cut them without. I'm going to do one without. Stem down, and same as always, slice. Slice it whatever thickness you want. It's a happy little mushroom. It's a mushroom cloudy friend. Oh, stay away from the cactus juice, people. It's bad for your health. So, I've got my sliced mushrooms without most of the stem. I'm going to put it into a long bowl because I don't want to find another small one, and this will take up the big bowl. Next, this gets kind of hard as you get to the edges when you don't cut the stem off. That's why I cut it off for that stability. Cap down and just slice. With stems sliced. This last one, I'm going to do my way again. Cut off the stem. Trash. See? Went right in the trash. Slice. I've done stuff like this many times. I actually cut up a star fruit. I just went shink, 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 shink. Spread it out, and it was beautifully presented, beautifully evenly sliced. I was amazed because I never really cut that nice. So the board is done for vegetables. So to make this a little bit easier so I don't have to quite clean, I'm going to flip the board because this side is still clean. The thing underneath was clean. So this side is now clean. I'm going to pick out a piece of pork. Let's go this one. I got to use this stuff anyways. It's going to go bad soon if I don't. Drop it on the board. Pick up your knife. Don't wipe your hands on your cloth with pork if you're planning on using it. If you do, you want to get a new one. So the method for cutting pork is the same way. 2 in back, 1 in front. So I want mine to be about 1 inch thick. That should just... No, I want it to be a 1/2 inch. So, tip on the board and just drag it through. Now, especially with pork, you don't want to do cross-contamination. So definitely, whenever you're cutting pork, if you forget a vegetable, wash your knife before you move on. Every time you work with pork, if you plan on using it for something else, wash your fucking knife. And that just about does it for slicing. I'm going to dice mine, actually, because I like to have bits. I like using chopsticks. I'm a white guy who likes Asian shit. Cut the smaller ones in half if you need to. The bigger ones like this one I could cut into thirds, so 1, 2, and this one, I think I could do 4ths. And there's my pork. Next, I'm going to kind of spread it out. Wash my hands. I'm going to be reaching into salt, so I don't want to have pork residue on it. Also, it's really important that every time you go to the bathroom, you wash your hands. People were getting sick in Flint, Michigan, because they didn't want to wash their hands because of all the lead that was in the water. And even in the food industry, they were not wanting to wash their hands, so people got sick. Please don't let that happen to you. Just deal with it. Wash your hands. If you have to, go get yourself a gallon jug of water. Wash your hands with that. Boil it to get it hot and wash your hands with that. Don't just sit there and say, oh, I'm not going to wash my hands because I don't like the content of the water. My water is chlorinated. I still wash my hands. Actually, that's better for you when you're washing your hands. Only because it sterilizes. So, I'm going to take a spatula for this because I don't want to get my hands dirty. A little bit of salt. Mix it in. Now let's see if my fiance got us pepper. I'll just use lemon pepper. Lemon pepper is good. Lemony, peppery. Sprinkle that on there. Flip. Seasoning is important because just because you have a good tasting cut of meat doesn't mean it's going to taste good. That salt and that pepper adds flavor and pulls flavor from the inside of the meat. That's why whenever if you were to drink, or if you were to eat a soup, but the flavor's not quite there, and then you were to put some garlic on it, it just tastes better. Or not garlic, but salt on it. It will just taste better. And that's because that salt is pulling flavor from the inside and adding its own. It's one of the few ingredients out there that does that, in my opinion. So, now that I'm done prepping my food, I'm going to try to turn you to the stove. There we are. This is going to be where it gets a little difficult to teach y'all because I don't have a webcam mounted up above like I want. but I'll do my best. When you're working in a kitchen, skillet handles in, because if it's hot and you walk through and someone bumps it and it's not quite done and grease just splattered everywhere, possibly even fell off of it. I had an incident where one of my skillets started falling. Grabbed it with my hand, forgot I just had it in the oven. And burned my hand here and mostly here. It was pretty fucking bad. But luckily it was only like first degree. I just put some butter on it and that helped cut through the pain. But be careful when you work with this stuff, people. As you can see, if you can see the pattern's not quite there, that's my fiance's fault. Meanwhile, my skillet still has most of its pattern. By the way, like I said, T-fell really good. I got my 2 red skillets here for about 20 bucks on sale. They're like 30 bucks for them. Came with both of these skillets over here. So before I get started, I'm going to take myself a drink. Now, these skillets have a benefit of the red symbol that's in the center has a ring in it that changes color when it's hot enough. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my skillets. This should all cook fairly quickly. So I'm going to turn on the big one first for right now. And once that gets heated, we will continue cooking. For this part, you really do want the apron because grease splatter. And with me wearing my school whites, I don't want to get more on them than I have to because I still got to wear it tomorrow and continuously until my second uniform gets in. So I'm trying to be as careful as I can with this. Make sure your sleeves are rolled up. You don't want that to get into your food and get stained and whatnot. You want to look nice and professional. Something I forgot to pull for my mise en place, vinegar. I'm going to cook in vinegar. I also didn't pull the butter because I don't want to bring it to room temperature yet. Let's use that. So, butter. One's almost empty. So this is getting there. It's not quite where it needs to be yet. So I'll double check and make sure I have everything ready. Oh, at this point, I'm going to put my pork away because, well, it's pork. I don't want it left out any longer than I need to. Also, cross-contamination, very important. Most of you probably have heard don't put cooked foods with non-cooked foods. This is because of pathogens that are not in the cooked foods suddenly get added to it when you mix like that. I've seen people on a couple of cooking shows that have had their kitchens just a wreck. They had cooked chicken in with raw chicken, and I'm just in there getting ready to vomit just from the thought of people getting sick. Don't do that. It's best if you put your raw meats lower and your cooked meats higher. This way, when the blood does drop, it's dropping to the lowest possible level of the fridge anyways, and it's not mixing in with anything that doesn't need it. So I put my uncooked pork especially, I put into one of my 2 bottom drawers. Eggs I usually put in the other one, but I don't know what my fiance did this time, so. Alright, the skillet is hot. You can't see it, but it's just slightly smoking, and I can feel it up here. So, take your olive oil. This is really good stuff, in my opinion, and I spent, $6.50 on it. And it's usually, I think, like $8-10 bucks. So, put a little bit of oil in it. Put down your oil. Move that oil around, lubricate that pan. Oh, and for people who are in college and don't have access to all this stuff, or at least they think they don't, try talking to your dorm and seeing if, or not your dorm, but your faculty offices and your advisors and whatnot. See if there's a kitchen on campus you can use to cook. It's a lot of fun. When I was in college the first time for machine technology, they had a kitchen that we could use. We ended up checking it out for an evening, and I made some spicy foods that I can't quite remember what it was. You could do the same, or if you're allowed to cook in your room, go with like an induction stovetop where the heat transfers through, so that way you are less likely to burn it down with open flames or something like that. If you can't have knives, they might have knives in their kitchen. If you can, get yourself a good set that you can. That's not going to take up too much room because I know how limited college rooms can be. If you can't store food like I can, then stuff like the minced garlic would be a pretty good safe bet to go with, unless you don't have a fridge, and then in which case, buy as needed. That's always the best policy in my opinion. Buy as needed, go fresh as possible. So the oil is watery now, so it's, heated. That's not to be confused with it has water in it, because that's bad. I've put water in oil before, and I've started fires before doing that crap. Don't do it. So first thing I'm going to do, take my shallot, place it right in that oil. I'm going to take a couple of sections of, actually I'm not going to do that yet because garlic is kind of tricky. So, next, handful of pork. Drop it in there, wash hands. It's good for a couple of seconds. Now, there's many ways to flip this. You can use the saute method because of how small it is, but I'm going to be smart and not flip that much oil. Tongs. Start flipping. What you want to do right now is get color on that meat. In a second, I'll try to find a piece and pull up and show you color. So this piece of pork actually has color. I don't know if you can see it well, but it has brown on it. More color, people. Shallot's cooking nicely. Also has color. Put it back in the skillet. Maybe roll it around to its top. Wish you could smell this. It smells delicious. I'm not flipping, I'm shaking. It helps keep it loose and swishes things around so you don't have to stir as hard with a pair of metal tongs. Now, because the pork is cooking quicker than I anticipated, I'm going to go ahead and saute my mushrooms. Because I'm the only one in the kitchen, I have no problem keeping my handles out so I have quick, easy access. Pour out the excess water. Just a little tip, personal opinion, sauteed mushrooms are better cold. So I recommend cooking them up and then putting them in the oven. Alright, garlic in. Let that cook a little bit. And prepare the butter. I'm going to use the full one. Unless you have butter allergies, don't be afraid. I'm going to let the garlic color a little bit. Which it seems to color differently. I can see the fibers. Alright, garlic is sufficiently colored. Add your butter. Don't worry, that's normal. That's the fat from the butter getting ignited. Happens all the time to me. I'm going to move my stuff into it. And swap burners. Pork is already methodized for you, so now for the fun part. Skillet is hot. The color has disappeared from it. Turn it up to high because I'm going to saute. Sauteing involves high heat. Oil in. Take the shallots in. A little bit of that minced garlic paste in. And finally, mushrooms in. Just because I'm working on the mushrooms doesn't mean I should forget about the pork. Butter's not melted yet, so I'm going to stir that in a little bit. That's bubbling nicely. And already this is sizzling. So I swirl it around, grab my tongs, short tongs for this. Separate that garlic paste and move it around. Now, sliced mushrooms tend to heat fairly quickly. So, they're ready for the next step already. Now is where I start getting fancy. Let that cook down a little bit. At that same time, check pork. It should be between 140 and 160, I believe. So because this is small bits, I'm not going to quite be able to put it in the way I want. Okay, these small bits are annoying me. Alright, it's approaching 140. This pork is done. Wash this out in a minute. Now the mushrooms are where they need to be. Turn off the pork because it is done. I'm going to pull out my second cutting board and use that to rest the meat. Resting the meat is kind of important because if you don't, and you cut into it immediately, all that juice that you tried to keep in it just runs right out of it. So I read that pork needs to be rested for about 3 minutes. So take these, put them out as quickly as I can because my mushrooms are starting to get done. Separate it from the skillet. And now for a little bit of fancy, I'm going to flip for you. Tilt forward. Kick it up. I lost a little bit of mushroom. That's alright. Kick forward, tilt forward. Kick it up. Mushrooms. Done. Now, I usually would do something green with it as well, but this is going to be a little lunch. I'm just going to mix it all together. So, I'm basically done. The next step, which I'm obviously going to do after I eat, is I'm going to clean up. Clean up is easy. You wash your dishes, wipe down your surface, all that stuff. I'm going to flip you back to me. So that is the easy part, but in a kitchen, an actual kitchen, that can take a while. Because I have a simple home cooking setup here. The kitchens that I'm going to be working in, they have so many nooks and crannies. It's not funny. So, that was my cooking segment. As you can see, my chef whites are still nice, clean, and ready for use Monday. So, we're done. Mushrooms are done. Next, you just plate. Like I said, this was more for the method of cooking, but you're more than welcome to ask me for how I did these again. and I will be more than happy to make a more detailed video on how to do this, what I put in, and all that. Oh, almost forgot. Salt the mushrooms. And with that, that has been this cooking segment for basic prep and cooking method. I'll see you next time here at Mako's Kitchen.